Hello,
Okay.
everyone. This is JPL, and today I am joined with
Christopher
and
and
as
Jay.
well as Jay. Yes, and welcome to the podcast name in brackets. Okay, we'll be continuing our monthly series of our top five films of each year. This month we'll be covering the year of 2003, the year where I remember going to theaters and I actually am retaining memory. So,
Hmm.
yeah. How's this year for you fellas? How do you feel about this year?
I don't remember going to the theater. I think the first time I can remember going to the theater is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in
Hmm.
2005. There may be something before then when we're going through these that will jog a memory, but yeah, no, this is like a very totemic year though in terms of like stuff that I grew up either watching or aware of in the culture.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, as this works, it's our top five of the year, so each of us have a top five. We start with our five, go to our bottoms. We also have a least favorite option as well. So, yeah. Christopher, what do you think about this year?
I don't remember.
All right. Well, Jay, why don't you tell us about the box office of this year before we start?
Yeah, no, this is an interesting box office. The top 10 of the year, we have six sequels, including the ends of two different trilogies that had sort of defined this early 2000s era. Number one film of the year, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. I believe this was the second film ever to make over $1 billion at the box office after Titanic. There have been ones that came out before that have since made $1 billion, but I believe in terms of which hit it first, this was um, the second ever. We also have Finding Nemo, The Matrix Reloaded, which for a while was the highest grossing R rated film of all time. It has since been surpassed a couple times, but we also have the start of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, Bruce Almighty, The Last Samurai, which I was surprised to see here. I should look up where that made the most money, if it was a big international hit or not. We also have Terminator 3, The Matrix Revolutions, both of the Matrix movies making it into the top 10 this year, X2, the X Men sequel, and Bad Boys 2.
All
And
right.
then, yeah, for the Oscars, this is also a very interesting year because The Lord of the Rings Return of the King walked away with, I believe it's 11 Oscar wins. It won every single category it was nominated for, including
Wow.
Best Picture. Um, so yeah, there weren't many awards left for the other films to win, but we did have other nominees here: Lost in Translation, Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World, Mystic River, and Seabiscuit. The Palme d'Or winner was Gus Van Sant's Elephant, and the Razzie Worst Picture winner was Geely.
All right. Well, why don't we start with our number fives with you, Jay?
Yeah, I just mentioned this one, and it is The Matrix Revolutions, of course, directed by Lana and Lily Wachowski. This is the final of the original Matrix trilogy. I won't say too much in case you haven't seen the other ones, because to talk too much about the plot description would be to go into the weeds with those. But yeah, this is often considered by people to be the worst in the franchise. But for me, it's my second favorite. I love everything about it. It's this like big epic sci-fi battle. There's like so many interesting revelations about how the Matrix works and what it all means. How like what its purpose is and its design. A lot of good like lore things hidden in there. Um, and then like yeah, the end of the movie just has this almost like biblical tone in terms of how it's dealing with. I mean, Neo essentially becomes this like blind prophet who's wandering through, not literally wandering through, but flying through this wasteland, post-apocalyptic wasteland, and trying to like save society. Yeah, it's just so fascinating to me. I get why people don't like it. About a third of the movie is spent with characters who we only briefly met in the last movie, as opposed to Neo and Trinity and Morpheus. But yeah, I love everything about this. It it's a lot of fun, really cool production design, and effects. Yeah, John was wondering, we were talking before this, and I mentioned that I had fewer honorable mentions this year than he did. And he was wondering why I hadn't put The Matrix Reloaded here. And I actually don't love The Matrix Reloaded, but The Matrix Revolutions is just so wonderful.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen the Matrix trilogy, but yeah, I don't remember loving the third one as much, but I do think that it has some very interesting visuals, some cool action set pieces. I remember it mostly for, I guess, parodies, or the style of this film influenced a lot of like YouTube videos or just fan made videos. I remember a lot of like stop motion videos, like Bionicle and Lego stop motion
Mm.
videos, like utilizing a lot of like recreating the battles of uh these films, but like with the different characters using the same music and effects and style and tone. And so that's the legacy I remember of this film. Um, but besides that, I can't go into the specifics. I don't recall as much. It's been a while, so yeah,
I have not seen any of the Matrix movies. They're on the list.
they're on the list. All
They're
right.
on the list.
So speaking of your list, Christopher.
My list. Yeah. So my watch list has over 1,000 movies in. Oh, number 5 is a Japanese movie.
Oh,
Um, yeah. Uh, uh sorry. Uh, Sorry, I'm not trying to be picky. I just noticed for funsies, it is the Korean poster that I found that Jacob used, which I find interesting. I don't know what the name means. The name of the movie is the number 2 and then the letters LDK. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I don't know. Also, I'm seeing on this poster it says Dual Project Volume 2. Is there another movie associated with it? I don't know. But anyways, let me talk about the movie as it relates not to the name or a poster. Let me talk about the movie itself. Um, 2LDK is, if I'm gonna talk about it, it is virtually the whole movie. Like it's a very simple plot. So if you don't want to hear anything about it, just don't listen. Move along. But it's two roommates who are actresses who end up auditioning for the same role, and you know they end up fighting each other. It's a very very simple plot. um I personally like rated this movie 3 stars. It's not necessarily like the most amazing oh my gosh movie. If you like seeing people, or specifically women, fight, this is right up your alley. Oh, more specifically Japanese women um fight each other, right up your alley. um but it is very interesting, kind of like seeing like the things that they're doing that kind of drives them into a further state of madness, kind of thing, as the movie progresses before like the actual fighting happens. But really, for me, I really love the last minute. I know that's so crazy to say, but I love the last minute. It's so crazy to me. Um, and maybe it won't be so crazy for most people, but for me, it worked so well. Um, Yeah, so I thought it was very interesting, like finding this movie, and I thought it was also interesting watching this movie when I think within like in the past like 24 hours, or 48 hours, I was actually mad about my roommate for something, and I was like looking for like movies to watch, and I came across this one's like, well, why not? I guess. um not and part of me was definitely like, this is not the right movie to watch in this mindset, but I was like, you know what, it just seems interesting, let's just see what it's like. So
Hmm.
yeah, definitely a very interesting watch for sure. um this definitely isn't going to be up a lot of people's alleys, but it's an interesting movie. So for it is very simple for what it is. Yeah.
So I looked it up because I was curious. So it turns out that the this is part of the Dual Project, which was a challenge issued by a Japanese producer to two directors to make
Interesting.
feature-length films using only two actors battling in one setting in only the time frame of 1 week.
Yeah, I heard that this movie was shot over like 8 days.
Hmm.
So
Do you know what the other movie is?
yeah,
Is
the
it
other
just
movie is called Aragami, um, which is also a Japanese action film. So yeah, it's like
Okay.
these two that were conceived of together within these constraints.
what's the Japanese movie called again?
It's called Aragami.
Is it with an A?
Yeah, yeah. Aragami, the raging god of battle.
Okay, interesting. So it's just like these two movies.
Yeah, yeah. It's these two that were made within these constraints as
That's
like a
so
challenge.
interesting.
Yep.
Okay,
And the
I
title, the 2LDK, is a real estate acronym for a two-bedroom apartment with a living room, dining room, and kitchen.
Hmm.
oh, that's so interesting.
The more you know.
Ah, the more you know. That's so cool. I think just because I saw this movie, I'm curious about the Origami, or however you pronounce it, movie. Um, just again, like what you said, and also what I heard about the movie. It was shot in a very constrained amount of time. Like you see in the movie, it's a very simple movie. The whole movie happens in this apartment unit.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so it doesn't venture outside it. I don't recall any shots outside it. If so, very, very few. Um, less than a minute's worth, if there are any. Yeah. From what I saw, and it probably was just not a great transfer on. When I watched it on Prime, like the the screenshots Jay pulled up, uh, like that looks really good. What I saw was very like yellowly tinted, like almost what you see like on that poster. Like what
Hmm.
you see
Oh,
on that poster is basically what it looked like in the movie, or how I saw it. So I'm very curious, like if there's a better transfer out there, like based off these screenshots, because also like the audio didn't seem at its strongest, but I just assumed it was just like an old transfer kind of thing. But like none of those things necessarily like hampered the movie that much. It was just like, it is what it is kind of thing. Um, so I'm curious if there's a better transfer out there.
yeah.
Well, I've never heard of this film, but I think what Jay said about the concept of like challenging a director to do something's like, huh, that sounds really cool. I wish they
Hmm.
would do more things like that over here
Yeah.
instead of just what we've been doing. So,
Hmm.
I mean, occasionally there will be. This isn't here in the U.S., although I think there were some made in the U.S. But there's like the Dogma '95 films. But yeah, that's a whole tangent we don't need to go on right now.
yes. Well, moving on to my number five is the Disney film called Holes, which is here for nostalgia's sake. This is a film starring Shia LaBeouf as a a teenage kid who gets framed for a crime he didn't commit. And he gets sent to community service in the middle of the desert where he has to dig like 100 holes. And it's based on a book. Never read it, but I've watched this film a lot as a kid. I really enjoyed it. I liked just the mystery, the camaraderie of the characters, and then just random stuff here and there. Uh, the photo shows little lizards there, but this film does have CGI. That's not so great. But yeah, this one, this was just a fun watch. It's one where we watched like a whole lot. Uh, a lot of times as like a group, where sometimes at school, you don't know this, Christopher, but at school sometimes it's like, end of the year school party, let's watch a film. Or like the church group where it's like, young adult church group, let's watch a film. Most of the time it was this film. So I watched it a lot.
Are you familiar with this one, Christopher?
I have not seen it.
Okay.
Hmm.
I
Adding a
have
lot of
seen
movies in
it.
my watch list today.
Yeah. I have seen it, but I don't remember much about it. I did actually read the book, I think several times as a kid. And I remember enjoying the book. I think I read it on my own, and then we read it for one of my classes later in elementary school. So, yeah. It's an interesting one. It has some interesting plot reveals later on as to like what the purpose of this digging is and what's actually going on here.
Yeah.
Seeing Sigourney Weaver is in it, that's fun.
Yeah, I don't remember her, but I guess she's here.
I think she must play the like person who's running the camp.
Yeah, she doesn't have a whole lot of screen time. I remember that,
Yeah.
but yeah, I can probably tell who she was. Yeah. Holes. That's a film. Just a lot of quotes that in my head that I can't quite recall, but are just there lingering. It's really weird. It's pretty fun for Disney Channel. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, this is a real abrupt shift in tone. For my number 4, I have Gus Van Sant's Elephant. Are either of you aware of this film at all?
No.
I don't
Because
think so.
yeah, so
Also,
this
sorry,
is
I apologize. I thought it was funny. I shook my head and then realized this is an audio podcast and I should probably verbalize.
well, yeah, this is a somewhat controversial film, though this won the Palme d'Or this year. And it follows several high schoolers going about their day. And when I say follow, I mean literally follows. The camera is often like behind them as they walk through the hallways of this school, um, and have conversations and do normal teenager high school stuff. It has a very verite style where it's just like presenting the things. There doesn't seem to be much of a script, just kind of people encountering each other. It does have an interesting nonlinear structure where different you'll flash back and forth in time. And actually, the top image that I've chosen here, all three of these characters we follow at different points in time, and we actually see this same moment from three perspectives throughout the film. So we keep intersecting with these things. But then, at a certain point in the film, two young men enter the school with duffel bags that are full of guns. And we see things leading up to that, and we see the results of this. And we see it's presenting something very horrible, but in a very frank and unembellished way. Um, it avoids easy explanations. It avoids sensitive. Oh, that's a long word that I didn't think about what I wrote out. It avoids sensationalizing things. We'll put it that way. Um, yeah, it's presenting this very tough subject matter, and it is a very disturbing film, but in a way that you feel like it feels important as well for what it is depicting, and it's doing so in a way that doesn't feel disrespectful or yeah, it isn't sensationalized. It reminded me a bit of The Zone of Interest, just in terms of being this sort of slow moving film that is getting you to kind of think about this very heavy topic. Um, Again, this is a controversial one. A lot of people don't like how the approach that this takes to the subject matter, or just struggle to actually watch it because it is very disturbing. And the realism, once the violence starts, it feels very realistic in a way that something that's maybe a bit more sensationalized doesn't. Um, but yeah, I just really appreciated having this and having it. So often when a tragedy happens, the desire is to like figure out why did this happen, and this film is, it presents different things that could be the reason, but it doesn't really settle on any of them. It's just kind of presenting everything to you. And yeah, I don't know, this is one that I don't know that I would ever recommend to anyone just because of the subject matter, but it is fascinating, and I feel like I got something out of watching it.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
like you
I've not
said,
heard of. Sorry. Yeah, I've not heard this movie, but definitely seems very intriguing. Yeah, is it an American movie?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It it,
Okay.
it takes
Just
place, I
with.
believe, in California. The high school they chose is just very cold. Like just the way the hallways are designed. Like they chose a really good school for it because you feel this sort of sense of alienation from the place. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's very poetic. It's yeah, it's very interesting.
Mhm.
well, I guess since neither of us have seen it, Christopher, we should move on then.
Oh, I guess it's my turn, huh?
It's your turn. You're number
Yeah, it
four.
is my turn. I was for a moment, I was like, oh yeah, that is my pick. Um, all right. The Italian Job um is a remake. I've not seen the original, so I have no comments on that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was living with a roommate at the time, and one night he had this heist movie night, and it was a double feature. And in order, it was The Italian Job and Ocean's 11. And as we know in past episodes, I am in love with the movie Ocean's 11. Um, but Italian Job, I, I think watched it, before I really liked movies the way I do now. And so I think in watching the Italian Job, I just kind of saw it as another like escapist piece of entertainment. Um, and I and kind of somewhat doubling down even on those thoughts a little bit, um, as I started kind of getting into things a little more. But then I forced myself to kind of think about the movie a little more, and I'm like, you know what, escapist media isn't bad. And what's the point of them at the core? They're fun. Um, and there was at least one moment in this movie where I was like, heck yeah, that was cool to see, you know? Um, so yeah, this again, it's a standard escapist uh, heist movie where there are moments that are fun to see. It's fun to see them, work, solve things, try to get things to happen their way, kind of thing. So it very much kind of is. If you like a fun heist movie to escape
Mm-hmm.
from your
Yeah.
world for 2-ish hours, perfect, right up your alley. It's fun. I kind of had to choose to reckon with myself, like, that doesn't make this any less of a movie than the other movies that we're here to talk about. This doesn't make this a bad movie by any regards. So, to some degree, I not to make this sound like a full like apology session, but like, uh, I think like again, I thought it was very interesting, like seeing my journey as I thought about this movie. I was like, this is fun. If you want fun, this is a good movie. And yeah, Is it going to be a movie where people are going to give the highest ratings, or is it going to work for everybody? Probably not. But if you know what you're getting yourself into and it's something that you think would be up your alley, The Italian Job.
If you enjoy a good heist, this is one of them. What do
Yeah,
you think?
I haven't seen this one.
Uh,
I know you've seen this one, right, John?
I have. I will talk about it.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. I don't have anything to add.
Yeah. So, like, I saw this when I was younger, and I pretty much I enjoyed it, and I thought it was like pretty cool. I did not know that this was a remake until like this
Oh,
year. I was scrolling through some service and was like, "What? The Italian Job, 1960s? What? Like what? What's this? It stars what's his face?
oh yeah, it's some
Michael
like
Caine. It stars Michael Caine, and
Oh, wow.
I did a double feature of that one and this one, and yeah, uh, what I found, because I've also seen the original Ocean's 11's film, is that I think that the remakes of the heist films do a better job of just having a heist film. They have solid endings where, like, yes, we get to the end of the heist and it feels good. Old heist films don't have a satisfactory ending because they cannot promote crime. So the films always end as like, okay, well, they did the crime, and here's them paying for their crime, which means they don't actually get the thing at the end, which is a bummer because it's a solid build up and then a bad ending. That's how I felt about the original series. Um, while watching this film again for this podcast, I realized something. The Italian Job is only for the first 10 minutes of this film. The actual Italian Job. Whereas in the original film, it's the entire film. They're in Italy, they're doing a job in Italy. Here, this film is just like retrospect. Oh, we had a job in the first 10 minutes, now we're in LA. So that's not a criticism, it's just like a little nitpick that I pointed out. But yes, I think this is a fun film, but I wouldn't recommend watching it right after the original one because Mark Wahlberg and everyone else, they are no Michael Caine. Because Michael Caine, he is a beauty.
I was seeing that Charlize Theron is in this, which is interesting because this is the year that she wins her Oscar for Monster. Um, so yeah, I didn't realize I'm a fan of Charlize Theron, so I may check this out in part
This
for
is
her,
also
and
a
also
very
because I love
2000s
heist
film
movies.
as well. Yeah. Well, moving on to my number 4, we have the Ang Lee Hulk film. This is one of the first films I remember actually seeing in the theaters. I can vividly remember like scenes, like watching it. I have an action figure of this Hulk somewhere.
Ooh.
Yes, I could pull it out, but what I can easily pull out right now, I was showing Jay earlier.
Show it to the audience.
Yes, well, I'm going to describe it. I have a
Oh.
wallet, a Hulk wallet from this film. It's my first wallet. I had it for a really long time. It was like I thought it was really cool. Yes, this is. I've always enjoyed this Hulk film. I know it's a very different Hulk film that what you would probably expect. It's a lot more slower, a lot more, I guess, more emotional. It doesn't quite have your traditional superhero plot line of like a good guy, bad guy. It's not like the Edward Norton Hulk film where you have your obvious plot about what's going on. This is just like this character is like going through issues, and the Hulk is like a representation of that. And it's a very comic booky style in terms of its direction and editing. And for I always found that very fascinating as a kid. Like the visuals like stuck in my mind because it is visually interesting. I also just really love how bright green this Hulk is. So it just always stuck into my mind. But yeah, Hulk. You saw this recently, did you,
Yeah,
Jay?
I recently watched this a few days ago, actually, I think.
Hmm.
It's I love the comic book editing style and like the visuals. Like the Hulk looks really good here, considering the time. And yeah, Ang Lee knows how to construct an interesting looking action set piece. And it's cool to see him do like a comic book movie. I love the idea of a more dramatically focused comic book movie. In practice, I definitely found it a little bit boring.
Sure. Yeah.
I was not super compelled by the drama that was playing out or the characters involved. I like it a lot in theory, but then sitting down to actually watch it, and it is long.
Hmm.
It's like 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I was definitely feeling that runtime. You know, they get to the big action set piece in San Francisco, and I'm like, oh, good, we're almost done. And it's like, no, there's like 30 minutes left. So yeah, again, I love it in theory. In practice, it didn't quite grab me like I was hoping.
Yeah. So, um, like I've probably mentioned before, John kind of was one of the catalysts for me to get into movies, and specifically with the MCU. And so, I spent a month going through the MCU, and one of the movies that was not on Disney Plus at the time was The Incredible Hulk. And then at some point, I was at John's place, and he showed me The Incredible Hulk, and me no likey. Um, and I don't know when it happened, but sometime that year, uh, he sat me down to watch this movie. I don't remember if I was resistant or not. It's decent chance I probably was, because I kind of was just like, I only want to do MCU right now.
I thought it was
Um,
your choice that you wanted to see this one.
it that also is very possible. I definitely know I was resistant in a general sense,
Okay.
with outside MCU things. Um, but it also is very much possible because I hated the Incredible Hulk that I was curious what this would bring. And I do think my like for this movie is somewhat encouraged by my dislike for the Incredible Hulk.
Hmm.
Um, so I will be honest with that. Also, it's been a minute, so do I remember a lot? Not a lot, but I do remember liking this movie, and I really don't think a rewatch is gonna change my opinion on that. I think like the story is interesting enough, and it's not as annoying as the other movie. So yeah, I still, yeah. Do I have a lot of deep thoughts and criticism? No, because I don't remember a lot, but I do remember enjoying this movie. And for those who enjoy the character of Hulk and have not seen this movie, I would recommend this movie to them. Also, I do find it a little interesting that I could mentally use this movie as a pseudo prequel to The Incredible Hulk. Like it kind of works in like timeline with like the way this Hulk movie ends and the way that the second, or sorry, The Incredible Hulk begins. Like
Hmm.
I could play in my head that they work in succession.
I think that was like intentional by the creators. They were like, okay, so at that time, people they think that this version of the Hulk, that's the Hulk, and so they're like, okay, let's just use that idea. This film ends in Brazil. Let's just start the next film in Brazil. Let's begin the film with like a minute like recap ish of the last film, but different. So it is confusing in a sense, but it is kind of like a pseudo prequel. uh, yeah, or the Incredible Hulk is a pseudo sequel, but not really.
Mm-hmm. It's fun to look at it that way, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, moving on then.
Yeah.
To number three.
So my number three, this is one that I wasn't sure if I was going to put it on my list, but then looking things over today, I was like, okay, there's no way, because no one else has mentioned this, and this needs to be brought into the conversation here.
Hmm.
This is Kill Bill Volume 1, directed, of course, by Quentin Tarantino. This tale of revenge and violence. It's this sort of pastiche of samurai and western and action movies and just all sort of turned up to the max. It's super colorful, super violent, just a ton of fun, very campy, but still has very compelling characters and interesting themes and ideas at play. A lot of just fantastic action set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
We have the bride, the protagonist here, who is really compelling. She has a lot of trauma in her backstory, and sometimes I wonder if it's maybe like a bit too much what they put her through. But then it's just very satisfying to watch as she's getting her revenge here. Um, Phenomenal soundtrack. Like Quentin Tarantino is known for having good taste in music, and there are just so many great songs that he chooses to bring in here. Um, Wonderful performances: Uma Thurman, Lucy Liu, Vivica Fox. Great, great action performances. It's a lot of fun. I've probably seen this the most of any Tarantino film, and it's probably my favorite of his.
I think this first volume I enjoy more than the second one. Um, I did tell you about the story about how I saw this
Yes.
as a kind of as a kid. It was this thing where uh there was this like little tradition like once a week after school my mom would take me and my sister to the movie theater because it was like a cheap day or something and we'd just go see something. For some reason we decided to watch this film. I don't know if they really knew what it was. They clearly didn't, but it's like, oh, let's watch this film. So we go in, we see the first 5 minutes where uh, a lot of stuff happens, and we left. And so I'm 5 years old. I'm vividly remembering the first 5 minutes of this film. It's like, oh, there's this fight in this house. I remember the little girl coming in the middle of the fight. I remember the the whole black and white beginning and all the people there. And so, yeah, I remember the hospital scene with the eye patch lady and the whole whistling. There are
Oh,
a
so
lot
you
of
made it
things.
like 20 minutes in.
Not 20 minutes. That was really early on.
It's at least 15.
It was something like that. We made it early. It was really early in the film though that we
Yeah,
were like,
yeah.
maybe
It's a long one.
this
So.
isn't something that we should see. So we left. Yeah, that's my memory of this film. And so I finally lived up to the trauma, watched it sometime in high school. It is cool action. Uh, Lots of blood in this one. I love the fake blood in this one. The squirting fake blood in this one. Um, that there's a style in this one that the second part's kind of missing, but it is entertaining Tarantino. It's not my favorite Tarantino, but it is a solid one.
Yeah, I've not seen Kill Bill. I think the only Tarantino movie I've seen is Jackie Brown.
Mm.
So maybe one day. Also, for collectors out there, Kill Bill, both volumes, and Jackie Brown are coming to 4K for the first time. I think they're coming via Amazon exclusive. Is it Amazon? No, there's sorry. I don't know if it's Amazon exclusive, but Lionsgate and Amazon have been doing a lot of exclusives. Regardless, it is coming to 4K. So that is also like piquing my interest of like, oh, it's finally coming to 4K. Might be time to take a look into it. So
Yeah, I need to pick up a Blu-ray or something because I only have the DVD. But yeah, I really enjoy both Kill Bills, but I do agree with John that this is maybe my favorite of the two. It just has something to it
Hmm.
that
Yeah,
it's yeah,
the second one is a bit more of an emotional journey, while the first one's more of
yeah.
the
which
action journey, I
I
guess.
do also, to be fair, love the second one. But yeah, the first one is more fun, and also I think the second one is a bit longer. I think it's 2.5 hours. Maybe not.
Hmm,
Maybe not quite that
maybe.
much. Maybe it's just 2 hours. 2 hours and 16 minutes. Okay. So yeah, this first one is an hour and 52 minutes. So 15-minute difference in runtime. But yeah,
Maybe.
Kill Bill.
Kill Bill. Moving on.
Um, what I have third on my list is Memories of Murder by Bong Joon Ho. Um, kind of like what I think a lot of people still kind of consider to be like his best movie, even since Parasite. Um, out of all the Bong Joon Ho movies, this is the one I did struggle to connect with the most. Honestly, like there's some movies where you may have like certain expectations of what to get out of it, and then when you watch it the second time, you are in full surrender to what the movie is because you've seen it, you know what to expect, and hopefully, most likely, you will, yeah, just fully accept what the intention was. And so I was really hoping to rewatch Memories of Murder um, before doing this podcast episode, but that did not happen, unfortunately. Regardless, I can still say that it's a well done movie. I mean, it is Bong Joon Ho. How can it not be? So yeah, it's a very well done movie, and also I think one of the fascinating things about this movie that I watched this movie before I watched Barking Dogs Never Bite. Barking Dogs Never Bite, I really feel like for me almost establishes or helped me really like understand Bong Joon Ho's sense of humor. Because in watching Memories of Murder, there were certain moments where it felt wrong to laugh, but then after watching Barking Dogs, I'm like, no, he's a sick little guy. He wanted us to laugh. And so I am also very curious of like now in watching Memories of Murder, like feeling a little more abandoned in like some of those moments. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, incredibly well done movie, and I really want to give it a rewatch at some point. Actually, I'm kind of on a journey of rewatching his movies. I watched
Mm.
Barking Dogs a few weeks ago. So Memories of Murder is up next, and again, I was really hoping to rewatch this before the recording this happened. That did not happen, but yes, I intend to rewatch it in prep for Mickey 17, which got delayed
Yeah,
again a few weeks ago.
I do think delaying it to April instead of January is probably for the better, just
Uh,
release wise. But yeah, it does mean we have to wait longer for it.
what are you seeing like makes it a
Oh,
better
just because
choice?
January is like a dumping ground for movies that studios don't care about.
Hmm.
So yeah, when Warner Brothers announced that they were releasing it in January, that was a bit suspicious. So moving it back a few months does make it seem a little bit more like they're actually interested in putting effort into the release. But
Hmm.
yeah, we do also then have to wait a few months longer.
Yeah.
So that's
I was wondering, like January, that with it being released in January and kind of being the only, or dare I say, only blockbuster in January, that would it have more of a chance to shine. But then again, those what kind of what you're saying, like the that is an empty time for people to even go to the theater. So hopefully, this is for the best. I
yeah,
hope like it will have a good chance to shine and it will do well commercially, kind of all those things. I don't know what's releasing in April, if I'm being honest. So I don't know what it's competing with.
yeah, I don't know off the top of my head either. But yeah, Memories of Murder. I actually watched this the day before I went to see Parasite. I caught up on all of the Bong Joon-ho that I hadn't seen. And this was before it had like a before Neon had picked it up and re-released it. Or actually I think they released it for the first time in the US. So I like had to find it on a different website
Okay.
to actually watch it with like not super well translated subtitles. But yeah, no, it is very much a Bong Joon Ho film in its style and in its humor. I would also compare it a bit to David Fincher's Zodiac, just in
Mm.
terms of how it frames this investigation into this serial killer. Um,
Mm.
this is also a funny movie at times. The main form of police brutality in this film is drop kicking. It's always fun when someone can go just drop kick someone into the and like
It
shot
always
in
like
the most
feels like it comes out
awkward,
of nowhere.
yeah, and like
It's
shot
like
from like
bam.
awkward angles that make it look like that make you go, oh yeah, drop kicking when you think about it is like a really odd thing to do. um but yeah, no, it is such like a weird balance of tone that he somehow pulls off. I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where I don't know if this is my least favorite of Bong Joon Ho's films, but I don't quite get the hype for it. I haven't rewatched it, which I have rewatched most of his other films, so maybe there's something I'll pick up on. I keep seeing the Criterion when I go into Barnes and Noble for my Criterion runs during the half off sale, and I think I might pick it up this next time to give
Mhm.
it another shot.
I do find it interesting because actually, like the Criterion release had controversy due to um, the color grading.
Okay.
But again, it is an accessible copy, so it being accessible, I don't necessarily want to discourage that. But just I thought I'd make you aware. So actually, I took the effort. This was it this year. Um, in Korea, it got a 4K release.
Oh,
Um, and so I purchased it, and I haven't tested the 4K disc, but I checked out the Blu-ray disc, and it does seem to have the color grading that most people seem to prefer, or at least not as what people seem to find controversial about the Criterion one. So it was interesting with the Criterion release. I kept seeing people saying that that was Bong Joon Ho's preferred, but then with the Korean release, a 4K even, that that just feels like what would be more like like how could you get that wrong? I guess from my perspective. So I'm really curious, like if there was some flub up with the Criterion release, um, or if that is
there
actually
is
preferred.
a history of Criterion releases being approved by directors, and the director's preferred color grading being different than what people generally prefer.
Hmm.
I know that that was a controversy with the Wong Kar Wai box
Yeah,
set, that the color gradings that he had approved were not the ones that people were expecting. So
yeah,
yeah, it might just be, that's I don't know if there was an actual mix up or if that is just what Bong Joon Ho actually prefers.
yeah. So I'd be very curious, like as time goes on, if we'll get more information about that, if he has a preference of either release kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be very interesting. I would love to yap more about that, but I should probably stop. But
Yeah,
but next time I watch it, I intend to watch the Korean release. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I haven't seen this one, so yeah. I guess moving on to my number three, we have X2. Is there a sub name for this one? X Men
I think
United?
sometimes, yeah, I think sometimes they call it X Men United.
Okay.
But I
I
believe
just know it
technically
as
it's
X
just
Men
X
2.
Two.
So, um, yeah, X Men
Yeah.
2, the sequel to X Men 1. Uh, this is. I remember watching this one more than the first one because this one spends a little bit more time with the character of Wolverine. He gets to have a little bit more cooler action scenes. We get to see a little bit more about his backstory, the mystery behind that. I really liked a lot of the scenes with Magneto and Charles as they play chess. Some good discussions there. And also, the film begins with like one of the coolest things out there with Nightcrawler uh, going through the White House, doing his little shtick, being mind controlled. Oops, spoilers. Um, but yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this one. It's a film of its time, but it was really cool at the time.
This is my favorite superhero movie of all time, without a doubt. Just it is so well constructed from a balance of characters and themes and ideas and all of these. The X-Men films, these first two, were kind of elevated comic book films. As much as that term maybe has some like snooty connotations, but no, these were comic book films that were considering thematic reasonings for existing and what this would actually look like in a real world situation, from a political, from a personal, from an identity standpoint. And where the first one, I think, does well in that up until the last act where it kind of turns into a standard comic book movie. This one throughout is exploring these themes and exploring these characters in such depth. Um, yeah, it's just so great. There's so many perfect scenes and so many perfect moments, and yeah, it ends on like a really good note. Um, Nightcrawler, fantastic character. We get to see a lot more of Magneto and Charles interacting. We get to see Mystique getting sort of more focus and getting more of a character here than she had gotten in the previous film. Um, yeah, it's so good. I love this film.
I have
Christopher?
seen this movie. Um, I've watched 30 X-Men movies like in prep for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm just gonna be very honest. Um, I don't remember. I I remember moments or locations. Funnily, I remember. I feel like locations more than I remember moments. I can
Mm.
like start putting moments in some of those locations, but I really don't remember this movie. So I really don't have a positive or negative. I think also based off what I'm saying, and also based off some things I've said with some of these other movies, like the Hulk movie. I don't have a lot of memory, but I came away from it more positively. So this movie, I guess I don't recall having as positive of a reaction to it like I did with the Hulk movie. But again, I simply do not remember. I'm very curious again how I would feel on a rewatch. I don't recall disliking it.
I
I
think
think it I might have just been more like another one in the books, thumbs up. So I'm also hearing Jay's thoughts, what he just said. I'm curious if I would catch on some more of those subtleties second watch.
I think from memory, what you told me was that you weren't as invested in the mutants up until X Men Origins Wolverine. I think that's what I remember. That
I
you liked
definitely
that one.
do I definitely do remember like at least Wolverine as a character. It didn't click
Mm-hmm.
for me until he walked away from that helicopter and it burst into flames. And I was like, he is him. That is Wolverine. Oh my gosh, I get it now. And so yeah, to rewatch the original trilogy and to be like, now I get Wolverine kind of thing.
Okay.
Um, I am very curious of like my investment, how that would be different. But to be fair, like I legitimately, even with Apocalypse and the 2019 Dark Phoenix, I do not recall my feelings about those movies, and just as much as I don't recall my feelings about this original trilogy. So
Mm-hmm. Okay then. Well, let's move on to our number twos then.
Yeah, my number two. This is a Christmas film by legendary anime director Satoshi Kon. This is Tokyo Godfathers, which it's just wonderful. It follows three unhoused people, one of whom's an alcoholic man, a teenage runaway, and a trans woman, and they stumble upon a baby who has been thrown out in this dumpster that they're going through, and it's around Christmas time, and so they decide to take care of the baby and find its parents. And they go on this adventure through Tokyo and encounter various different people as they're trying to reunite this baby with its parents. I love Christmas movies just as a general thing, and I especially love non traditional Christmas movies that kind of, rather than the family or the hallmarky type things, they kind of are exploring people on the margins and stories on the margins. And I also like animated movies that don't quote unquote need to be animated. There really isn't anything in this film that couldn't be done in a live action movie relatively cheaply. But the animation just brings such personality to the characters and the world that you wouldn't quite get if it was live action. And obviously, Satoshi Kon is an anime director, so if he's gonna make a film, it would be anime. But yeah, we're just following these characters and learning how they ended up in these bad situations and learning to empathize with them and find their humanity. Um, yeah, and it's just like the journey also like gives each of them a chance to reflect and try and atone for their mistakes. And it's a Christmas movie. You feel great walking out of it, even though there's some darkness along the way. Um, yeah, this is, as people are preparing for the Christmas season when this episode drops. I assume that this is one that is definitely worth giving a shot because it is just, I think, fantastic.
Was this film nominated for an Oscar?
No, it was not.
Okay.
Um, yeah, this is one of the years where they only had three Best Animated Feature Oscars. So the nominations went to Finding Nemo, Brother Bear, which yeah, and then the Triplets of Belleville. There's a
Okay.
theory that potentially this could have gotten a nomination, except that it was released the same year as Satoshi Kon's Millennium Actress in the U.S. Millennium Actress was released in Japan a few years prior, but then this was before anime getting brought into the U.S. was a super priority thing. So it took a few years. So then these two got released in the same year and potentially kind of kept each other from getting the recognition they deserved at the time in the US. But I mean, they were well known in Japan and
Hmm.
have since become very well thought of by people who enjoy animation and good movies.
Yeah, I think the only thing I ever heard about this film is that it was one that probably should have been nominated at the
Yeah.
time, but that's all I really knew about it.
Oh,
Christopher?
I should add quickly a second. There is controversy around the treatment of the trans character in the film. The most recent dub and subs, which I believe were done by G Kids, are excellent in how they approach that. So if you are looking for a way to watch this, try and go for the more recent stuff because some of the earlier stuff is a little bit shaky on that part.
Yeah, I've not of this, so add it to my watch list.
All right.
I'm
Well,
virtually like adding every movie we mentioned to my watch list.
tell us a film that you've watched then for number two.
Me, my turn. Okay. So I watched this yesterday. Um, Identity, directed by Mr. James Mangold.
Oh,
Um, yeah. Um, I think James Mangold's always kind of fascinated me as a director. So like one previous episode, I like right before we recorded episode, I was finishing up was it Kate and Leopold. I think that's what it was
Yeah.
called. So yeah, Identity. Um, I enjoyed it. I'll put it that way. I've been looking at like a handful of reviews and the reception of it, and it feels pretty mixed. Some people buy into it, and some people think it's a little too ridiculous. Which I hate to use that word because I feel like I'm implying a lot by using the word ridiculous. Um, but um, yeah, the base idea is uh, people at a hotel kind of getting killed off one by one. That's the base idea. So it's a thriller in that way, and I bought into it. I bought into what was being presented to me, and I had fun with what they gave me, and I thought it was very interesting what was given. Um, yeah, I really don't know what to say about it unless I am to talk more specifically. But even so, I feel like my comments would be a little surface level in that I enjoyed my experience. I bought into what was being presented to me. I had fun.
Yeah, I'm seeing here it's inspired by Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None,
Hmm.
which yeah, that is a favorite of mine just in terms of like general plot structure. I haven't actually read the book. The book has gone through a lot of titles, and don't look that up if you don't want an interesting time. But yeah, the that just structure of it is like the mystery of as these people are getting killed off one by one and trying to figure out who's responsible. That's a concept I like. So that has made me more interested in checking this one out.
Mm-hmm.
That is the murder mystery generalization. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully it works for you because I think basically things happen where I guess maybe people felt duped, and I think that's why people why it doesn't work for people. But I surrendered. Like again, like we were talking, like some movies where like it's a second watch that I fully surrender myself. But this movie, I felt fully surrendered with this first watch, and I bought into it. So it's not going to take a second watch for me to be like, oh, now I get it. I understood, or I bought into what was going on the first watch, and so it worked for me.
I have not seen this one, unshockingly. Well,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I don't really have thoughts. I was just basically gonna go more in circles, so I'll stop going in circles.
all right then. Let's go in a straight line then. So, going to my number two, we have Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl. Yeah, this is around the time where Disney is starting to make films about their Disney rides. I think the year prior to this one, we had the Country Bears. Um, the not so great one. But this is the first successful one of this, and it's probably the only really good one of the one that they've released. So yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean. This one helped bring a trend of the 2000s where it's like, ah, yes, pirates are cool again. And this is what people think pirates are like. And it's fun. It's a really fun film. Lots of really fun characters. Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow is just very entertaining, possibly to a fault, considering what they end up doing with the character later on. But for this first entry, many consider this one to be the best or just the perfect film that did not need a sequel. I enjoyed the other ones, but yes, this one stands alone by itself really well. We got Orlando Bloom in his very popular second role. Uh, he's Legolas in Lord of the Rings, and then he's this guy here. Uh, then you got Keira Knightley being the cool female character who don't need no man. Uh, just yeah, very entertaining all around. Cool action, lots of really good choreography, set work, naval work. What else to say? Yeah, it's entertaining. It's a classic.
It is so fun and
Yeah.
just like funny. Like this plays almost like a comedy, but then you get to like the scenes of like supernatural stuff happening or the naval battles and it turns into an all out like action movie. Yeah, it's such a great balance. I think Gore Verbinski is a fantastic director who unfortunately has gotten saddled with some difficult projects, but this is a top tier example of his talent as he's creating this world and these characters and this sort of supernatural stuff within sort of a pirate themed thing. Um,
I'm surprised that I'm surprised at a lot of the things that Disney allowed to get away with these pirate films.
yeah,
It's like no other Disney film will do this, but these films they can do a lot apparently.
yeah, it's just a phenomenal adventure film. So much fun. I remember watching these. I don't remember exactly the context, but yeah, I sat down with my parents and we watched through all of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. At that point, I think there were only the three,
Hmm.
and then I've seen the other two since then, and I actually saw number four in the theater when that came out. But yeah, my parents were like, "Oh yeah, these are so much fun, even though you aren't 13 yet, and these are PG-13. We're gonna let you
Yeah.
watch these."
Yeah.
And yeah, they just so much fun. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't revisited them in a little bit, but also the soundtrack is just phenomenal.
Oh yeah. That one pirates theme that people think is the pirates theme, but it's actually only in this one film. you know. So, um, yeah, this one, I saw the all the Pirates film, the years they came out. This one, I don't know if I saw it in theater, but I remember vividly. We're in a house. We bought a projector, so we're watching the DVD on the projector, eating popcorn, having a good time. Good times. You haven't seen this one, have you, Christopher?
Yeah, I have not. I did see like so there was like one day during changeover we were doing some project in a room that we usually haven't, but there was access to TVs and one supervisor was like, "Should I put on a movie?" And yeah, and it turned out to be this. So I saw like the first 20 minutes, and then I think we moved on quickly from the room than we expected to, or whatever. So didn't end up finishing it, but also I wasn't that invested in it on two fronts. In that I was doing my job, and so since it wasn't something I was familiar with, I wasn't paying that much attention. But then also what was kind of being portrayed enough, and I think again this is in my snobby I'm not watching films era anyways, but
Sure.
I guess not a lot really attracted me to it. So I think definitely due to its nostalgia, um, nostalgic prestige. I'll say it that way. I was gonna say prestige, and I'm like, no, it's more nostalgia. But a lot of people really like this, so nostalgic prestige. Make it sound a little nicer.
It
I
did get
do
some
intend to watch
surprising.
this one day. Sorry, what'd you say?
Oh, it did get some surprising nominations at the
Oh, okay,
Oscars. I believe Johnny Depp got a Best Actor nomination.
that's pretty
Um,
cool.
yeah, and then
So
obviously a lot of technical stuff as well, which it
yeah,
lost
that
to Lord of the Rings and
Lord of
then
the
Master and
Rings.
Commander, which
Yeah,
but between those two, I think they won all of the technical awards
Yeah,
that year.
understandable.
I think there's an interesting thing where both Commander and this film reuse a sound effect for like very similar scenes, but the tone of those scenes are very different. I think like one of the cinema classes often likes to be like, this is what we'll tell you about cinema sound, and so they just do that clip and tell us nothing else. So there you go. Thank you, cinema. Um, well, let's move on to our honorable mentions.
Yeah, speaking of Master and Commander, I just watched this over the last couple days. This is directed by Peter Weir. It is a fantastic ship movie. Um, Phenomenal. Just so like it's kind of episodic in its structure, which surprised me. But it's sort of these different. It's this British ship which is chasing down this French ship, and they're going all around South America, and encountering different things. You know, they encounter a storm, and they have to figure out how to deal with the storm. Then they encounter some like a period of time where there's no wind, so they have to figure out how to do that. They end up on the Galapagos. This is the first non-documentary film to shoot on location on the Galapagos. Um, there's big naval battles, but you're also getting life on the ship and learning about all of these characters and the various members of the crew and their what their jobs are. So yeah, it's just very fun in that sense. I know, John, you've seen this one.
No, I've been wanting to
Oh,
see
you have.
this one,
Okay,
so I haven't seen this
you
one.
would enjoy this. You
I
would very much enjoy this.
I hope so.
This is one you could probably watch with your parents if you wanted, because it's also very. I mean, yeah, it's
It's also
pretty
very
buttoned up.
possible that like this was one of the films that my mom and sister would watch, and maybe I'd like walk into the room and see something happening and then leave. So I might remember like one moment from this film, but I don't know if it's from this film, so I can't be sure. But
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I'll say.
Then I have Jane Campion's In the Cut, which this was actually on my list until very late. I swapped it out for Kill Bill Volume 1, in part because it's been several years since I've seen it and I don't remember enough about it to talk about it. But it's this erotic giallo inspired thriller that actually ruined Meg Ryan's career. She got uh, at this point she was known as sort of the innocent girl next door.
Oh
So when she
yeah.
started this erotic thriller, it kind of broke some people's brains, and she ended up like falling out of grace, and only recently has come back to Hollywood. Significantly dented Jane Campion's career. She didn't make another film for I think 10, almost 10 years, and then didn't make another film after that for another 10 years. Even Mark Ruffalo didn't escape unscathed. It took him a while to get his career back on track. This was just like hated at the time. And I think critics just maybe didn't get it, because when I watched it, I thought it was pretty fantastic. It's dealing with the sort of interplay between danger and attraction. And the basic plot is Meg Ryan plays a school teacher who is living in the city, and there's a serial killer on the loose in her neighborhood. And then this cop shows up, and she starts having this relationship with him, but it's kind of like she's maybe starting to think, is he the serial killer or not? While she's also still in this relationship with him. Um, so yeah, it's just this really interesting and thorny character dynamics here. Um, yeah, I need to rewatch it because I love Jane Campion's films, and yeah, this might have made my list, except that I swapped it out for Kill Bill because I felt like we needed to mention that on the list proper. I assume neither of you are familiar with this one.
Yeah,
No.
none of the list in your honorable mentions I've seen.
Okay, yeah. Um, well, then I also have the. This is a film from Apichatpong Weerasethakul, who is a very well known Thai director. He is known for his their slow cinema films. So they're very slow, very poetic, very lyrical, take a lot of time, a lot of nature, and the types of movies that when people talk about like artsy movies, they're talking about this. But then he made one movie that is a 60s Thai action movie and James Bond parody musical starring a drag queen. And it's called The Adventures of Iron Pussy. And yeah, it
Uh-huh.
follows this character as she like goes undercover and tries to like figure out this stuff. I don't even really remember the plot. I just remember it being insane in the most fun way. And then the fact that it is directed by this like super respected, super artistic director who just like wanted to have some fun and was working with this friend of his who is known as a drag queen and wanted to make this film. And they're like, oh yeah, let's just make this together. Um, yeah, it's just phenomenal and incredibly funny. Anytime I watch any of Joe's other films, this one comes to mind. It's just like, how did the same guy make Memoria or Uncle Boonmi and then also make this bonkers, insane action parody movie? Um, yeah, just a lot of fun. And then I also have Interstellar 555, which is the feature length animated companion to the Daft Punk album Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And it's completely silent except for the music and some sound effects. But it follows a band from an alien planet who get abducted and taken to Earth, become celebrities. So it's like aliens, but it's also celebrity culture. And there's some like gothic horror elements that are fun. Um, Gorgeous animation done by, I believe, Toei Animation was responsible for it. But I mean, phenomenal. The sci fi designs all look great, the characters all look great. And the story is actually surprisingly poignant. Even though there isn't any dialogue, they build up certain characters really well, and there's a moment of heroic sacrifice that actually resonates throughout the film. And there are some like scenes that were making my eyes water up a little bit. So, which I did not expect going into like a film that was designed to be in a companion piece to an album. And then, yeah, I should probably just mention that on my actual list, I didn't put them on my top five here just because I knew other people were going to be talking about them. But X2 is probably my second favorite film of this year,
Mm-hmm.
technically. Even though it isn't on my list, I did want to mention it.
Yes. The Daft Punk film, I have only I've heard most of the album, and from the film, I've only seen like clips that they just use for the music video portion of the album.
Yeah.
So I've seen out of order, out of context moments of the film that I could probably piece together. Christopher, I know that you've heard one or two songs that I sent you.
It would only be songs that you've sent me. I've not listened to the album in full, so
Right. Plus,
Well, if
there's
you are
this
going
one
to,
song that's like popular that they just like you'll likely have heard it at some point. It's like, oh, that's what this song is from. That's probably that just one that you
oh,
probably have heard of.
I will warn you if you plan on watching this. I was able to find it pretty easily. It's on YouTube. It's on Internet Archive.
Mm-hmm.
They are currently doing, probably around the time this episode comes out, a one night re-release in theaters that is upscaled using AI. And I've seen the
Ah,
trailer and it looks terrible. Like everything has been smoothed out, all of the details have been smoothed out. So do not watch the one that is in theaters. They'll probably also release it on Blu-ray. So if there's like a new Blu-ray release, be a little wary of that. Do some research into it. This is available at least currently on YouTube on Internet Archive. So there is a way to watch the original. It isn't the highest quality, but it's better than what they're putting out in theaters.
bummer, man.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because they could have just restored it and it would look phenomenal. But yeah,
that's really upsetting. Wow. Yeah, that's actually my exposure to the movie of like seeing that was being gonna be at my local Alamo Draft House. That is such a shame. It's really sad hearing how many movies. I know it like very few to a degree, but regardless, still is the case of how many movies I'm hearing that AI is being used to restore them, and it
yeah.
makes me sad. It really does. It's a cancer.
Any honorable mentions from you, Christopher?
I will somewhat pass on my honorable mentions.
All right.
We'll say like Hulk probably would have been one of them, and then the other one we'll talk about in a moment.
Yes. Well, I guess moving on to my honorable mentions, I have the most of the group because I, you know, I decided just to fill out the time slot, the squares they have going on here. So, starting off, we have The Last Samurai, where Tom Cruise is this drunken veteran who gets sent over to Japan to demonstrate something of weaponry. I don't know. And then he gets kidnapped by some samurais, and he learns what it means to be a true samurai. And so, this film I enjoy for like the samurai action. This is kind of where people like Hiroyuki Sanada and Ken Watanabe
Yes.
are uh, getting popular in American culture from this film. So, uh, yeah, there's lots of cool moments, cool fights, cool whatever. Um, it's well done. It is a long film, I think, but it is.
It's not too long.
I mean, it's long enough.
It's like 2.5 hours,
Yeah, it's long
maybe
enough.
2:45. It's
Yeah,
it's yeah.
yeah. The ending is ambiguous, but yeah, you've seen this one, Jake?
Yeah, I just recently watched it. It's a big historical epic white savior type movie.
Yeah.
I loved seeing Hiroyuki Sanada and Ken Watanabe. I believe he got an Oscar nomination for this performance. He is phenomenal in this.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, this is also like Tom Cruise goes to Japan and learns how to be a samurai, and that's kind of everything you would expect to happen from that summary happens. The final battle sequence is very impressive.
Yes. I don't really know what Last Samurai means because, like, it's not the Last Samurai. There's a couple still around, but yeah. So next up then is the Christmas film called Elf, which saw this one in theater. It is probably a heavy nostalgia watch that people watch every Christmas. I did that in the earlier days. I I don't love it in recent watches. I think I've grown tired of the comedy, but at the time, I enjoyed Will Ferrell and this character and this story. I thought it was very entertaining. It is fun at times. It has quotable lines. Um, I wouldn't call it high cinema. I wouldn't call it a film that I would want to watch every year for Christmas, but every once in a while, sure, why not? Uh, you had a story to this, didn't you, Christopher?
I don't really know much of the story, but I saw it like late 19. And it was before, me more enjoying movies. And it
Mm,
was before I was I like Will Ferrell. Um but that was before me liking Will Ferrell. So I don't recall finding it that funny. I think at the very least on rewatch I would at least enjoy the Will Ferrellisms.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't have that like fond memories like other people do.
Right. Yeah. The more Will Ferrell I experience, the less I probably enjoy this film.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
because
it's
he
like,
plays
okay.
this character like not
Yeah.
directly, but he plays very similar characters to this quite often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, have you seen this film, Jay?
I have not. I This
Oh,
is one of those that anytime someone finds out I haven't seen it, they immediately go, "You have to see this." And
okay.
yeah, I haven't felt the need to see it. So
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, the next honorable mention is one you have seen, and it's Bionicle: The Mask of Light, the movie. We did our Binging Barbie podcast miniseries on Bionicle. You can listen to those episodes. This one is definitely, I watched it a lot as a kid. There's a lot of nostalgia. I enjoy moments. But looking back, it is not the greatest thing out there. There are some issues. It's definitely not a good introduction to Bionicle or these characters, but it is if you were into Bionicle at the time, this was a cool film, I should say.
Yeah, I have shared my opinions on the Binging Barbie podcast, so I will.
All right. Moving on, we have the Pixar film Finding Nemo. So we got fish film here. This one was just like fun, you know. We got Dory, you got Marlin trying to find Nemo and all that. A lot of quotable lines. The ocean's beautiful. It's great. It's the good Pixar era. So I don't know what else to say about this one.
Yeah,
If I
this
have
one.
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay,
Oh.
if I have a story, John, I have more of a story with Finding Nemo.
Okay.
It was, I think, kindergarten, and they played this movie for me, and I think my parents did a fine job at not showing me very thematically crazy things
Okay.
like growing up.
Hmm.
And so the shark scene made me cry. And my parents said, I don't remember, I had nightmares for a week. So they were very unhappy at the school for subjecting me to this movie. Fast forward 2015 ish. We were in Korea, we're at a phone store. Actually, let me throw in. I think around 2009, I read like a book adaptation of the movie, and then in 2015, I was at a phone store in Korea with my grandpa, and he was getting like new phones, and they were showing Finding Nemo around the point where I had left 10 years prior. I can arguably say I've seen the whole movie. Arguably. Now it was without sound, and then also like having the context of the book, I know the story kind of thing. Arguably, I've seen the whole movie. I do refrain from even logging it on Letterboxd presently because I've not seen it cohesively, and then also not to mention the last bit after the sharks, I did not have sound. So I will say that I've not seen this movie on that technical for letterbox purposes, but arguably I've seen the movie, and just like all the other movies I've seen that I said this similar thing, I don't have a positive or negative comment. I don't, at this age, I don't feel like I'll have any traumatic baggage with the movie, but I don't have anything to say positive or negative about the movie except it being Pixar. It's probably amazingly animated.
Yeah, I haven't seen this in several years, so I didn't have it on my list. But yeah, I do remember enjoying it a lot as a kid. But yeah, it does have those like moments of thematically more heavy moments, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the
Yeah.
sharks are genuinely scary. And I don't know. I also have a fear of the deep ocean, so and what lurks in it. So
Yeah.
maybe that traces back for this movie for me.
Yeah.
I don't
Also
think
has
it
one
does.
of those memorable Pixar openings where this one's probably the darkest technically. If you put the human aspect of like, 100 babies died in this one and the mother died in this one. So that's interesting.
To
Anyway,
be fair, most of those babies would have died anyway. That's why
yeah,
they
that's
have so
true.
many.
That's true. But they don't
Sorry.
tell kids that. Anyway, moving on to the next one. We have the film The Core, which is this disaster film technically. I love these campy disaster films that are not that great but are just enjoyable as heck. And The Core is a wild one where something's going on in the core of the earth, and so what they do is that they drill down to the center of the earth where they decide, let's blow up a bunch of nukes and that's going to fix everything. And it is I found it so entertaining, just like how stupid this is, but I love it. The CGI is notably not very good, and then the ending is also notably really stupid. But I am down for this, and so that's, I guess you can call this a guilty pleasure, I should say. So there you go. Stanley Tucci is in this film, so that's
Oh,
something. Yeah. Hmm. Speaking of campy and stupid, we have Spy Kids 3D. Game Over. I remember this one. This one actually came out in the theater where I grew up years later, and so I saw it in theaters. We had the cool glasses. I remember the 3D being cool and all. Uh, in retrospect, this isn't the best film. I will say it's probably the best film that incorporates 3D because 3D is an interactive experience in this film. The entire film is not in 3D, and so they be like, "Hey, put on your glasses." They'll tell the audience to put on their glasses as the characters are putting on their glasses, and it's like really immersive and entertaining. Um, Visually, it does not look great, but it is fun. It has fun moments in this one. I kind of like the costumes in this one. Uh, this this film also I uh, has Rocky
oh,
Sylvester
Sylvester
Stallone
Stallone.
in this one is playing like five different characters, and so it's silly. It's ridiculous. Have you seen this one, Jay?
I have, not in a very long time. I vaguely remember certain elements of it. I remember Elijah Wood being in it.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is kind of the peak of like the Robert Rodriguez green screen stuff compared to even the other Spy Kids movies. But yeah, I do want to eventually rewatch it.
This is one that I remember vividly rewatching the behind the scenes a whole lot of, and it was like
Mm.
this is kind of like the only behind the scenes that I watched at the time. So it was like, oh, that's cool. That's how they did that shot and that shot. It was lots of fun. Um, in retrospect, it is the worst of that trilogy of that time. So, yeah. Next up is a film starring Rowan Atkinson, and the film is called Johnny English, and this is a parody, sort of the James Bond films, kind of like low budget parody, with Rowan Atkinson doing what Rowan Atkinson does with his physical comedy and just whatever funny things that he does. I enjoyed this a lot growing up. I hadn't watched the James Bond films, but I found that this dumb character to be really fun, entertaining. I love Mr. Bean. I love most things that Rowan Atkinson does, so this was just up my alley. And of the three films that they've made of this trilogy, this was my favorite one. This one also has John Malkovich in it.
Oh,
Yeah. And then the last honorable mention I'll say is the film Looney Tunes Back in Action. This is one I saw in theaters as well, probably also delayed in my country. I of like the live action mixture of Looney Tunes and people, this one was probably my favorite, partially because it had just a bunch of references and cameos. There's Batman, there's classic sci-fi characters. There's a Doctor Who thing in here. I always enjoy the plot in this one. This one also has a James Bond parody. Even has, I think, Timothy Dalton in this one.
oh,
But this was fun, enjoyable, the one I enjoyed the most at the time. But it is not an amazing film, honestly. But I found it entertaining.
yeah. Did we watch this one together? COVID time.
No, I don't think we watched this together.
I thought
Or
we
if we did,
did.
this was like be way before COVID.
Oh, maybe. What am I thinking of though that we watched?
I know we watched The Iron Giant together.
Yeah, there was another one that was
There,
similar to this. Let me see if I can find it.
I
Thank
don't.
God Letterboxd Direct and Diaries exist.
Well, thank goodness, like Jay was using Letterbox at the time, so yeah.
Yeah,
So
I thought I had seen this one, but maybe. Oh no, I have seen this one.
you've seen this
John,
one, yeah?
are you the reason that I started using Letterboxd?
I don't know.
So
I
I
don't know.
no, I think I downloaded in 2000. Sorry, wow, 2021. Um, I don't know how else I would have heard of it.
I don't know. I think you and I got into Letterbox at the same time. You introduced Serialized to me. Uh,
Hmm.
I know that I knew of Letterbox from Jay, but um, I don't know. I don't think I introduced it to you. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
So I just found it. We watched it July of 2018.
Are you sure it was you and I that watched this one?
I'm like 90% sure that it was
Okay.
you and I that watched this because I wouldn't have watched it without someone else.
That's a weird. Why would we watch this together? Why
I
this one
don't know.
specifically would we
I
have
think
watched
you
this
chose
together?
it out. Um, and I gave it a review 1.5 stars. Not really worth spending any time on. So apparently I didn't like it. I do not remember this movie except that I watched it with you.
I I don't remember that.
Apparently.
I remember Iron Giant when we watched together, but yeah, that's
This
about
must
it.
have been around the same time.
It must have been. Yeah, we used like the Netflix party uh watch along thing to watch these films together. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, why don't we move on to our number ones?
Yeah. So my number one, which if you have listened to any of the previous episodes, it should be pretty obvious. The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Like I've said before, this Lord of the Rings trilogy is foundational to my love of movies. So it kind of just has to be here. Like I love X2 so much, but I can't put it above Return of the King. It just I do not like movies without Lord of the Rings. I mean, maybe I do, but my love of movies takes on a different form without watching Lord of the Rings at a formative age and becoming interested and invested in the making of, but also like this movie contains every emotion that a movie has made me feel all in one movie. It makes me cry every single time I watch it, multiple times throughout various different moments. It has like incredible spectacle and design, like all of the other Lord of the Rings movies. I do think it has the worst moments in the series, mainly Sam's anger management problems,
Oh, okay,
which
yeah.
are not in the book at all and really ruin his character here. But putting that aside, this also has some of the best moments in the series. The Ride of the Rohirrim, Sam carrying
Mm,
Frodo, the at the end the You Bow to No One. Even though like six endings, too many endings here, but I cry with each different ending because yeah, except the like everyone laughing on the bed. That one's a little silly. But yeah, no, this is just yeah, this is these Lord of the Rings movies are my favorite of all time. I don't tend to rank them or try. I don't tend to make a distinction between them because they are all like my favorite movie of all time. But if I were to rank them, this would probably be my favorite of the three, just because it has, even though it has my least favorite moments, it also has my favorite moments in the trilogy.
Christopher.
Yeah. Um, so my brief spiel, like I mentioned in the second to last episode, since I was not here last episode. I watched the movies in 3 day succession a little before I started getting more into movies. I'm very curious how I'd feel on the second watch. Not to mention my second watch, I intend to do the extended cut. Not, I think, I feel like most of the time as relates to like an extended cut, I would rather watch like an alt version to more like compare. But there are just so many movies and so little time, and I don't, and especially with most people saying the extended for Lord of the Rings is better, I'll probably just give that the shot whenever I get around to it. Um, I think I found myself like in baggage with the second movie because like I think you see the characters develop more, but then you have the trees. So then with this third movie, it is so much action that I think I've found myself exhausted by it. So again, very curious how I would feel on a future rewatch. Um,
It is an exhausting film. Like, even as someone who loves it, you have to set aside an afternoon for this one
yeah.
because it is lengthy and it is, as you were saying, a lot of battle scenes. But then for me, yeah, the thing that shines through, I love the battle scenes. To be fair, like, they are spectacularly made battle scenes, but the emotions are also what shines through all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, very curious how I would feel on a future rewatch. But as a whole, I respect the Lord of the Rings movies a lot. I think on Letterboxd, I kind of just dished out like a casual 4 stars kind of thing, but that's not very. I didn't put a lot of thought into that rating. I just there's like the X Men, a lot of those X Men movies. I just don't have ratings for because I don't know. I think I have enough respect for Lord of the Rings to dish out 4 stars, but very curious how I would feel differently on future rewatches. Should I go ahead with my number one then?
Yeah, go with your number one.
Okay, my number one. Uh, Most of the times with like when I rank things, there are like many factors I consider. How much do I like them? How much do I want to rewatch something? Most of the times, that's usually how I rank things. I'll put two movies next to each other, and I'm like, which one would I rather rewatch? And usually, the movie I'd rather rewatch, I put above it. Now, sometimes, especially like when like doing this list, there's so many movies I don't remember. So it sometimes almost feels like I would rather rewatch that to refresh my memory. So then I kind of go to more like how do I feel right now, um, to just like rank them kind of thing. On Letterboxd, I only have two movies rated at 5 stars. So a lot of those, what maybe a lot of people would kind of dish out to be their 5 stars, are in my like 4.5s. All my movies in 4.5 stars, I have also put on the heart next to it, except for this movie, Old Boy. I watched this week. It is, in my opinion, I think, and general consensus with a lot of people, brilliantly done. Um, eh, you, what also I think what blew me away afterwards was the fact that my roommate said it was harder watching it the second time around, and I started like weeping at that thought, and I think that kind of like made me think about kind of the genius of the movie. Like I said earlier, there's some movies where like on a second rewatch you surrender yourself to the vision kind of thing. I'm not I'm not saying that with Old Boy. So like for most people. So it's like okay, like Memories Blurred didn't really work for me the first time. Maybe second time I'll fully get it. There's some movies like Identity. It worked so well the first time, but then watching it like the second time, me kind of like knowing how things are, for some movies it's like it doesn't hit as hard. Identity might be more like it'll be interesting to see but also not really. So I feel like Identity is like a mix of the two. Like I know what happens, so it might not be impactful the second time, or I'll be picking up on clues and see it'll be very interesting to see it the second time around with the context. Old Boy is something else, very much like with like context. It is a completely different experience forever with future watches. It and I think for me that is someone what sells me on the genius of this movie is it will somehow never get easier to watch. Every single watch will get worse each time you watch this movie, and very few movies I feel like can claim to have that kind of effect. Um, so I think I respect this movie for its genius. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough watch, especially when you know what is going on. Um, yeah, I watched this a couple years ago, maybe. It Part of it is that I knew going in what the twist was, so it maybe didn't hit me the same way it would um, if it is a surprise. But then also, like, I have seen at this point, I've seen all of Park Chan Wook's films, and he's not really a director I vibe with a whole lot. I find most of his films either are like too horrible that I just kind of go emotionally numb. An Old Boy kind of fits into that category, or I
Very
just don't
understandable.
really like connect with them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is one where I understand and respect it, and there are moments in it that are very effective. But yeah, it didn't quite work for me the way it works for a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, it is a very like for being a Korean film at a point in time where Korean cinema was not widely known internationally, and yet this one hit internationally and people knew about it. I think this has been like ascribed in part to like early Netflix. When Netflix was starting to get big in the early 2010s, this was one that people were discovering on Netflix and seeing and being shocked and surprised by what they were seeing. And um, so yeah, it has this like very strong reputation, which I do think like yeah, for people who want to see this, this is very much worth seeing. Just didn't quite work for me the way I was expecting it to.
It's very fair.
I haven't seen this film. I've seen bits and pieces from like a stuntman perspective, where it's like, oh, I
Mm.
want to see examples of the stunt work and choreography in this film, and I've seen that.
Yeah.
And I know there is one there is one notorious scene where he eats a live octopus, um,
Yes. Yeah.
which is gross, but that's a thing. So yeah, maybe
Yeah.
one day
Especially
I'll see
knowing
this.
that the
Maybe
actor
not.
is vegetarian, like that scene is very. It's disturbing enough on its own, and then like knowing the what was going on behind the scenes, like yeah,
Hmm.
it is a tough film, but that is not even the most shocking thing to happen in the film. That's maybe the thing that is easiest to explain to people though, as like yeah, if that is not something that you can watch, this is not a film for you. And even if it is something that you can watch, this still might not be a film for you.
Like I legitimately will struggle to recommend this movie.
Yeah.
Like I remember my roommate saying like similar things, and I did not understand. And then now I've seen it, I'm like, oh, yeah, I especially women. Very few women will I ever recommend this movie to. Even men, just people in general, people as a whole. Like you have to. Uh, uh, but if you want to watch it, it's on Netflix right now.
Yep. Well, let's move on to my number one. And if you saw the trend of the past couple ones, this one shouldn't be a surprise. My number one is also Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. Um, like everything we have said in the past few episodes, just really solid, really well made films. A great trilogy. I love all of these films. As one film, I think in terms of like extended cuts, this is probably my favorite extended because it has a lot of the more interesting scenes. Like this one has the scene with Saruman. It has the scene with the mouth of Sauron. It has the thing with the staff being broken. Um, but this film also just has a lot of my favorite, just quieter moments, like Gandalf just talking about death and life, and just a really calm moment. Uh, of course, there were here in death. Monologue is fantastic, but uh, I also just really love the operatic music of this film. I've shared a couple songs with you, Christopher, from this one, and I think this one really gets the epic scale of just like this whole thing. It really feels like we were building up to something grand, and here it is, like a grand explosion of stuff. It is long, of course. It's even longer with the extended, of course, but it is still cool. Really good. I don't know what else to say.
Actually, thinking I have one additional thought. The slide Jay made. Um, I think this movie actually has probably the scene that stuck with me the most is the cold open, uh,
Mm.
uh, the birth of Smeagol.
Yes, yeah.
That yeah, I loved that scene. I still do.
Yeah, it's such a like marvel in terms of both the character's journey and then the design, how they're going from practical makeup to the CG design. Um, it's one of my favorite things when I rewatch it is tracking that. And there's a moment where it's Andy Serkis in heavy makeup, and then he closes his eyes, and when he opens them, they're the CG eyes from the mocap model.
Mm-hmm. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, let's sour the mood with our least favorites.
Okay, so this was already brought up as the Razzie winner for Worst Picture this year. This is Martin Brest's Gigli. Have either of you heard of this?
No.
Okay.
I've heard of it just by like a list of Razzie nominations.
This is a notorious box office bomb. Follows Ben Affleck. He's this low level mob enforcer who
Mm-hmm.
kidnaps a developmentally challenged man, played by Justin Bartha, in a performance so horribly insensitive it's surprising that he hasn't been tried in a court of law. It is so bad. It is like if Justin Bartha didn't have National Treasure already on the schedule, he would not have had a career after this film. It is terrible. And then Jennifer Lopez shows up as a very unconvincing mob enforcer. I don't really blame her performance. I blame the rest of the movie for not going in the direction it was supposed to go in. Um, Ben Affleck then complains that he can't sleep with her because she's a lesbian, so she decides to sleep with him for some reason that is beyond me. I am attracted to men. I do not find Ben Affleck in this movie attractive. I don't know why anyone would find Ben Affleck in this movie attractive. Physically, maybe. His character, not at all. And then they just hang out in Ben Affleck's featureless apartment for 2 hours until it's time for the movie to end. That's it. That's all that happens. It is so originally Martin Brest was going to make a much different film. To me, it doesn't sound like it would have been good, but it would have been better than what actually came out. But around this time, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez started their little romance together, and it was in the tabloids, and everyone was talking about it. So the studio came back and demanded extensive reshoots to add in this romance plot, which does not make any sense at all with either of these characters. Um, yeah, by the time the movie came out, everyone was over Bennifer, and it ended up being one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. Like, if you remember from a few months ago when Joker 2 came out and people were saying it's one of the biggest second weekend drops ever, the reason that one wasn't the biggest second weekend drop ever is because this one was. This one had the biggest second weekend drop of a major studio release in like a certain number of theaters for like a non-COVID movie. So yeah, they were like pulling it from theaters in week 3 because no one was seeing it. And yeah, it's bad. It it is not good. It's not even like so bad it's fun because it's mainly just them hanging out in a featureless apartment and talking, and not like interesting conversations either. It's just yeah. It is the perfect movie to like watch or read an article about everything that went wrong with its production. But beyond that, it is not worth experiencing at all.
Yeah, haven't seen. Don't ever plan to.
Adding it to the watch list. No.
It is like, I'm glad to have watched it because otherwise I would have spent the rest of my life being like, but what is this? So like having watched it now, even though it's a bad movie, I could at least be like, okay, now I understand what it is and why everyone hates it so much because it is genuinely that bad.
My least favorite movie. Johnny English did not work for me. I think this would have been a movie that would have been more suited to like watch with people, to laugh with together. But watching it alone, sometimes with a movie like this, I'm more relegated to just be like, this is stupid, which is unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah, would have preferred to watch it with people. Maybe I would have had more fun. Maybe I wouldn't look so down upon it. Who knows? Didn't work for me. I also don't have that much of a connection to Mr. Bean. I do find it a little amusing, but I've not watched it a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and so I don't necessarily have that much of a connection with the actor for me to excuse my love for Mr. Bean to enjoy this movie.
Yeah. It also does not have an amazing pace to it. Oftentimes, for comedic films like this, where it's based around this specific actor who is a bit more of a physical comic, um, a lot of times scenes will stop for Rowan Atkinson to do a bit, and then we keep going. So the pace is kind of stop and go at times. So if you can sit through that, if you enjoy this sort of thing with Mr. Bean, then sure. But yeah, if you're just a casual viewer, probably not. And going on to my least favorite film of the year, and it turns out it's not a good year for Ben Affleck. Uh,
No, it was not.
my least favorite film of the year is the film Daredevil, the Ben Affleck Daredevil. Oh boy! So I really love the Daredevil character, and this is the film that introduced me to the character. I watched this film when it came out. As a little kid, I thought it was visually interesting because I didn't pay attention at all to what the story was. But I watched it again recently, and I'm talking about the theatrical cut. I have not seen the director's cut, so maybe there's a difference. But the theatrical cut is I have no idea what's going on at all in this film. Things happen. There's no real story where characters go from A to B, and there's no like real line. Characters go from like A to Z, and I feel like I'm missing so much context. This film is missing so much context. It has a lot of like very interesting visual stuff going on. It has some cool moments. I think that the acting is fine. Um, but again, I cannot follow what's going on in this film. And because of that, I just did not like it. I don't think it's a very watchable film. Maybe the director's cut fixes a lot of those issues. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I'll watch it one day, hopefully. But for theatrical cut, since I'm no longer a kid and could just watch things visually, this was not great. So, yeah.
Yeah, I saw this for the first time ahead of Deadpool and Wolverine because I knew about a specific cameo that was going to happen, which I won't say anything more than that. But yeah, I had heard a lot about this not being a good movie, and yeah, it's not a particularly good movie. I think one of the things about it that stood out to me were the needle drops and how they're just way too on the nose. Like they are the most obvious choices they could have made at pretty much every turn. Um,
Mhm.
in my letterbox review, I also put that this has one of the most egregious cases of fridging in a film. I do not remember at the moment, even though I saw this a few months ago. I don't remember what that is, but I assume it has to do with a certain character because I have heard about like stuff about that online. But then yeah, watching it as well, it's like, oh, that was a character death that only serves the hero's plot and does not give that character the respect they maybe should have.
Yeah. Also, just trying to like abridge maybe some comic stories here and there. Um, but yeah, no, I would not recommend the theatrical cut. If you're like a Marvel enthusiast and you want to be a completionist about Marvel films, sure, yeah, I'll recommend it, kind of. But like, if you're looking for Daredevil, there's a better version. It was the Netflix show now on Disney Plus. Check that out for a better version. This one, if you're curious. Um, so yeah, I can't say for sure if if the director's cut is good or not, but it might be slightly better. Who knows? Um, but that's all we have for this year. Any final thoughts you want to say, guys?
Pretty good year for movies, and bad year for Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters. Yeah, I don't. I would definitely like to see more movies that released, just in general. So
Okay.
I'm as I remember earlier in the week, I was like freaking out because like I didn't want my list to like mention Lord of the Rings like so early kind of thing. Like it just felt like I didn't have like a lot to really talk about, and then so I was glad like I was able to catch Old Boy and Identity to share in this episode. So as time went on, like yeah, I think I have a pretty solid list and have something to talk about instead of saying I don't remember X2, but here it is on my list, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah, and like I said, this is like the year where I start remember things vividly. Yeah. I'm
hmm
5 at this point. I'm going to pre-K. So, yeah. Well, anyway, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you all next time for 2004. Anyway, bye.
I
Bye.